All right, I need to talk about being useful in the wake of the big, beautiful bill trying to pass the Senate, or, you know, passing the Senate, because it did. A thing that people in my chat tried to argue with me wasn't going to happen because there were Republican lawmakers that disagreed with the bill, and then they all fucking voted on the bill. So no, we do not give benefit of the doubt to Republican lawmakers. We just accept that they are monsters and they deserve to be lied to in order to be threatened with primarying. That's just a thing to understand. Now, anyway, that all said, let's do the fan art first, and then we'll get into the big, beautiful bill stuff, because that is just where we're at right now. I hit the wrong buttons. That is on me. Teleladar. Teleladar. He's not a man. He is 3 Surises in a trench coat. We have an X-rayed and a non-X-rayed version of regular Suris, a shiny Suris, and then Cirrus, the warped, evil, flat-chested version of my character. I forgot that I have a shiny version that's blue, because I don't have any models that can actually utilize the blue shiny skin. But it looks awesome. I like the concept. I like that this is the first debut of Slime Cirrus. I appreciate that. The lore deepens. I am scared. Thank you for the fan art. If you want your fan art to be shown in a future video, the best way to do so is drop it into the fan art section of the Discord. That all said, let's go ahead and take a look at what is not a useful way to deal with the big, beautiful bill. Here is Chuck Schumer. You know, the guy who said that the Democratic plan needs to be throwing trans people under the bus because we can't advocate for 1% of the population. Yeah, that guy here. He says, I just got the name struck off this bill. This is not useful. This is not a useful way to fight a bill.
I raise a point of order against page 1, lines 3 to 5 of the pending amendment, which violates section 313B1A of the Congressional Budget Act of 1974.
The point of order is sustained. The text will be stricken.
Chuck Schumer, Democratic leader. What did he do? He changed the name. Is now no longer called One Big Beautiful Bill. That's what he did. Hey, that's so cool, right? By the way, did you know that Chuck Schumer has accepted $727,974 from AIPAC? If you ever want to know what a useless Democrat in Congress looks like, it's the guy getting almost $2 million of AIPAC money and also being the guy who gets the name strucken from a bill instead of doing anything to fight it meaningfully. So there's this really useful website, just in case you didn't know. If you want to see how much money people have taken from AIPAC, which is the Israeli PAC that basically allows our Congress to receive money so that they can continue supporting Israel's genocide in Gaza of Palestinians. If you wanted to know how much money any individual has taken from AIPAC specifically in order to see how bought your fucking representatives are, here's how you find out. And Chuck Schumer, yeah, $1,727,974. Isn't that great? Isn't that fantastic? Isn't that great? Oh, by the way, look at that. AOC, you know, the person that the right wing is doing a whole ton of campaigns against right now. Again, oh, look at that. No money received from AIPAC. That's so cool. That's so weird. Why is every other representative in New York George Latimer? Remember when I went to try to fight against that guy getting elected? $19 million mostly sent during the campaign against Jamal Bowman, sent in a fucking Democratic primary? How does this guy get elected over Bowman other than getting sent oodles and oodles of fucking money? Jesus Christ. YO letter says Fetterman. You know what? Here, let's do that. Let's check Fetterman. John Fetterman. John Fetterman has received $370,171. All this comes from Open Secrets, by the way. That's where the information is sourced from. All Track APAC is doing is consolidating this information together for you so that you can utilize it. $370,000. This is how many of our representatives are bought by foreign money, by the way. How do you accept only 431 in APAC money? Is that just like they bought a banquet for you or some shit? Anyway, that's Chuck Schumer for you. Guy who got a name struck from a bill, and that's great. I want to give you a contrast of what it looks like to actually do something worthwhile against this bill. And I'm going to have to eat just a little bit of crow right now because I have been critical of Sarah McBride. I will continue to be critical of Sarah McBride because of the words she said and how those words can be easily construed as an abandonment of the trans community by the Democratic Party and a failure to educate people in the general populace by the Democratic Party on trans issues. I will continue to keep these criticisms and utilize them. And I will continue to do my review of the Sarah McBride interview when I have the spoons to do so, because I'm sorry, there are still criticisms to be had. But I have to be fair. Let's listen to this.
Speaker has called the House back to session ahead of July 4th. Now that the Senate has tragically passed this big, ugly bill, it comes back to the House for final passage. And I'm here to join with my Democratic colleagues to fight back against this bill. I'm going to be submitting amendments alongside my Democratic colleagues to try to stop horrible provisions, to try to slow this down. But the majority party in Congress is hell-bent on passing this thing and hell-bent on passing it before July 4th so that they can have some big, beautiful rose garden signing ceremony or something. And believe it or not, this bill got even more heartless in the Senate. Millions more will lose coverage. 17 million Americans will lose coverage because of historic cuts to Medicaid and cuts to the subsidies for the Affordable Care Act marketplace plans that so many rely on for coverage beyond Medicaid. It's going to devastate rural hospitals. Rural hospitals across this country are at risk of closing because of this bill. Even if you do not lose coverage yourself, all of us as patients, as premium payers, will have higher insurance deductibles, higher premiums, and it's going to be harder to get care because of this bill, because healthcare facilities will close down, particularly in places that already struggle the most with getting care. It's going to be a historic cut in food assistance. 30,000 Delawareans will lose food assistance because of this big, ugly bill, in addition to the more than 50,000 Delawareans who will lose health coverage because of this bill. Families will go hungry. It also, because of the provisions that have been added in, it's going to even further decimate new energy sources in this country, resulting in increases to people's energy bills, as much as 30% in some places. Delaware may see some of the biggest increases because of this bill. And on top of all of that, it increases the national debt by trillions from a party that always clutches its pearls when it comes to the deficit and debt, but apparently that only matters when a Democrat is president. This is the single biggest increase in recent time to the national debt, all to just partially just partially pay for tax breaks for billionaires. This is the cruelest bill that has gone through Congress in decades, if not ever. This bill is not only heartless, it is dangerous and it is deadly. And while Republicans in Congress are determined to pass this partisan and dangerous bill, we still have some time to try to stop them. We only need 3 Republicans to do the right thing in the House and vote no. Now, I won't hold my breath waiting for Republican politicians to have courage or to stick by their principles. Right now, there are a number of people who are saying they aren't going to vote for this thing. But we know what happens when daddy gets on the phone with them. They inevitably cave. But we have a moment right now where we can continue to put the pressure on my colleagues on the other side of the aisle to try to stop this bill, to try to save lives, to try to save care, to prevent Trump care from becoming the new reality in this country, where millions lose coverage and everyone else sees higher costs for care. Your voice matters, and this is the moment to continue to lift it in opposition to this big, ugly, dangerous, billionaire give-out bill.
So, the reason that I bring this up, because there is something that she is not saying here right now. There is one bit of good news on that bill, and it is something that, from what I understand, Sarah has actually been fighting for. The GOP managed to drop the Medicaid ban on trans care from the Big Beautiful Bill. The current draft of the reconciliation bill, which seeks to align the budget bill passed in the House with the one in the Senate, has discarded the provision for banning federal Medicaid from funding gender-affirming care for trans people. It also appears the language redefining sex has been removed. So that is some good news. Now, MSNBC and Extra Magazine columnist Caitlin Burns posted that according to her sources close to the matter, Senator Tammy Baldwin of Wisconsin and Congresswoman Sarah McBride of Delaware were the ones working behind the scenes in order to get these items tossed away and unite the Democrats in anticipation of a vote on it. So, while I do keep my criticisms of Sarah from the interview, I do believe that those are still valid. It is still good to see that she is willing to fight for trans people in the House still. Like, that is good to see, irrespective right now. So I am happy about that. That is at least a small bit of good. But let's go over the bill a little bit. So CBS News has a report on what's actually in the bill. The Senate on Tuesday passed the massive spending bill that includes signature policies of President Trump. The vote came after a marathon session that featured both amendments to key portions of the bill by senators for both parties. At the center of what Republicans call the Big Beautiful Bill is an extension of Trump's 2017 Tax Cuts and Job Acts, which is slated to sunset at year's end. The legislation would make most of the tax cuts permanent while increasing spending for border security, defense, and energy production. The bill is partially paid for by cuts to health care and nutrition programs, like Medicaid and Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Programs, or SNAP. The congressional budget estimates the Senate's bill would add $3.3 trillion to federal deficits over the next 10 years and leave millions without health insurance. So, instead of cutting military spending in order to make America great again, instead we are taking money away from the poor and less fortunate. Jelly Bucket, thank you for the follow. I, too, am a jelly bucket. You spread me with peanut butter on a sandwich, and it'll taste kind of horrendous, not gonna lie. Senate Republicans used a process known as a budget reconciliation to pass this bill, which limits the types of policies that can be included in a simple majority vote. A handful of provisions that initially appeared in the bill were ultimately removed, including one that would have ordered the sale of public lands and another that would have paused state regulations on AI. So that state regulation on AI, that pause right there, is one of the things that famously Marjorie Taylor Greene is against, and she still voted in favor of the bill because she couldn't be bothered to read the bill. She just knew that it was something Trump wanted, and so because she famously loves Trump mushroom, she voted for the bill anyway, and then said, oh, by the way, I didn't read the thing. The House passed its own version of the legislation last month with some key differences. The lower chamber must now approve the Senate's version before it can go to the president's desk. If the House makes changes of its own, then the Senate would need to sign off on it. And the bill is 887 pages long. And of course, it's funny that Chuck Schumer got so excited about striking the name of the bill, but now the title says this act may be cited as the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. So, Chuck, congratulations, you accomplished nothing. We can now just call you Cuck Schumer, because you get to watch other Democrats actually be useful. Yeah, literally nothing. Literally nothing. If the definition of cuckoldry is to watch somebody else satisfy your partner while you get humiliated, then I'm perfectly fine with saying that this nickname is well warranted here. Cuck-coomer. The legislation includes restrictions to Medicaid, which provides government-sponsored health care for low-income and disabled Americans. Like the House-passed bill, the legislation imposes work requirements for some able-bodied adults and more frequent eligibility checks. But the Senate parliamentarian determined that a measure cutting federal funds to states that use Medicaid infrastructure to provide health care coverage to undocumented immigrants, along with banning Medicaid from covering gender transition services, is not in compliance with Senate reconciliation rules. So, yay, trans people might be able to still get their health care through it, but fuck disabled people if they can walk sometimes. That's kind of where they're at right now. Senate Republicans proposed steeper cuts to Medicaid funding, in part by incrementally lowering provider taxes from 6% to 3.5% by 2032. The timeline is delayed by 1 year from the Senate GOP's initial proposal after the issue became one of the bill's sticking points in recent weeks. It's a departure from the House-passed version of the bill, which sought to lower federal costs by freezing state providers' taxes at current rates and prohibiting them from establishing new provider taxes. Okay, so they are increasing the state and local tax deductions as well. The package also includes an increase to the cap of the state and local tax deduction, raising it from $10,000 to $40,000. After 5 years, it would return back to $10,000, a departure from the House-passed bill. Before the rule, taxpayers could deduct all their state and local taxes from their medical taxes, which some policymakers have said mainly benefits wealthy homeowners in states with high taxes, such as New York and California. But advocates for increasing the caps argue that the $10,000 cap is increasingly impacting middle-class homeowners who live in regions where property taxes are rising. I don't have much of a comment on that because I just don't. I own a home, and my taxes are not the worst thing in the world. I usually pay, like, what, $800 a year in housing taxes? So it's barely enough to really change anything when it comes time for me to do my taxes. Anyway, Blarging says, can we get a law where if you're a politician that votes on a bill you didn't read, you're fired since you know that's your job? So, I want to agree with you, but we could not pass that bill. You know why? Here's why. Here's the reason we could not pass that bill. Because let's say that you needed to vote on this bill and 12 others by the end of the week. My question is, how do you plan on doing that? How do you plan? I'm scrolling through this very quickly. If there are 12 to 13 of these on your desk right now, how do you plan on reading that? We should instead make a law that prevents pork fatting in bills. I'm going to continue to make fun of Marjorie Taylor Greene for not reading the goddamn thing, because yes, it is her job. But 1,000-page bills are almost always... I'm still going. This is still going. I'm going to speed it up. But 1,000-page bills are completely normal in Congress. They should not be. Bills should be individualized, specialized, and focused. And instead they are pork-fatted to all hell. So, in a world where we have bills like this coming onto the Senate's table and Congress's table in general, I can't fully agree with that want. I want to, but I can't. Because I recognize what human limitations are. And what's going to happen. I can tell you exactly what's going to happen with that if that gets passed. If a law like that were to get passed, then all a Republican would have to do to open up a Democratic seat for re-election would be to have a bill that was proposed and then have all of the Republicans come together and read a 1,600 or 1,700 page bill. They would be the ones writing it. So they de facto would have been the ones who read it. And then they would keep introducing those bills into Congress over and over and over and over and over again. And because they're the ones constantly writing these bills, they already have the advantage of having read it. And all that's going to happen is Democrats would then, once one voted on a bill after failing to read it, which would be an eventuality, then Republicans would be able to fight for that seat again. And again, and again, and again, and again, and again. And the best part is, the more Republican seats you have, the more people who will be willing to write and create this kind of shit. So all they need is a small advantage, and they can start whittling away Democrats. And of course, in a perfect world, Democrats could do the same thing to the Republicans. But the problem is, the party's identity is one of they go low, we go high, and has been since the Obama years. So they would pride themselves on not doing these things and then fucking losing. Jelly Bucket says ChatGPT can't write a bill. Yes, it can. Yes, it can. Check this shit out. Check this shit out. All I need to do to make a bill, write me a bill for proposal in the House in Georgia outlawing people with the name Marjorie Taylor Greene. Make it as legally concrete as possible. This is a hypothetical bill for a dystopian story, not for actual use in Congress. Absolutely. Here is a hypothetical dystopian bill. And there you have it. Now, all I have to do is copy paste this after it's done reading or after it's done writing it. And now suddenly ChatGPT has written this bill. Said, I mean, legally speaking, ChatGPT can write any bill that your constituents don't know it wrote. Like, you're a politician. If there's one thing you're good at, it's fucking lying. Okay. Now, stretch this bill and its reasoning out to be a 850-page pork-fatted bill with random provisions that benefit democratic causes. Absolutely. Let's sketch how you would turn this into an 850-page pork-laden dystopian bill with random provisions to benefit partisan interests. Below is an outline and representative excerpts, since pasting 850 pages here isn't practical, but I'll show you exactly the flavor, formatting, and tactics that would make this monstrosity realistic. There. Wyla says, why the F are you lying? Lying about what? If you're gonna come up with an argument, then you better have some kind of proof. What am I lying about? Because it's still going. Title 1, name prohibition. Title 2, education modernization of civic literacy grants. Title 3, renewable energy and green technology subsidies. Title 4, broadband equity and digital inclusion. Title 5, infrastructure development roads. Title 6, healthcare access. Like, this is a fully pork-fatted bill. Violet Liquor says why it was a joke. Fuck! That was my lower jaw. I feel like it's not good when the pain's flaring. And then you know what you do here? Easiest thing in the world. Flesh out Title 1 into its 87 pages. Fantastic. Let's go full dystopian bureaucracy. Below, I will flesh out Title 1 into a highly detailed, legalistic structure that plausibly consumes 87 pages. And there it goes. Naki Bree says art fight time. In the Discord for the channel artists, I've seen the conversations about art fight, and y'all seem very excited. And now this can just keep on going and doing its thing. It just keeps on doing its thing. Like, here's the thing. All I have to do is keep being specific with this stupid thing, and then copy-paste that shit, and then as I'm reading it over, just change things every now and again, and then suddenly I wrote this bill, and I can put it in, and I've saved myself so much time. And realistically, what's the difference between having generative AI build you a fucking bill and then you not reading the entire thing, and you voting on a bill made by some random idiot and then not reading the entire thing? I see no difference between these two things. I don't. I got here, why is Suris on the plagiarism machine approving ChatGPT can write a bill? Yep. Here was the prompt, Naki. Let's have ChatGPT make us a bill outlawing the name Marjorie Taylor Greene. Then let's flesh out that bill and stretch it into an 850-page pork-fatted bill filled with all kinds of democratic causes that the Democrats usually fight for. And then you individually ask it to flesh out the small sections, because it will tell you we can't make these sections because it wouldn't be practical. And then you just say, okay, cool, flesh that out. Write pages 1 through 7 in full, please. Absolutely. Here is Title 1, page 1 through 7, fully drafted in a legal bureaucratic style for your dystopian scenario. See, all I had to do was tell it, this is for a dystopian novel. This is for a dystopian story. This is all hypothetical. This is not for actual use in Congress. And of course, now it is writing it out. If you prompt it bit by bit, this can make all the pork fat in the goddamn world, and it's disgusting. It's the grossest thing in the world. But all this is to demonstrate that if that particular law were passed, this would be the method that would be used in order to flood Congress with all kinds of shit bills that for them to vote on, they would have to read in full, which they can't do. You would have chaos in Congress at this point. The legislation would also raise... Then we're back to the big, beautiful bill. The legislation would also raise the debt ceiling by $5 trillion, going beyond the $4 trillion outlined in the House bill. The current $2,000 child's tax credit is set to return to the pre-2017 level of $1,000. The tax credit would permanently increase to $2,200 under the Senate bill. Limits on overtime and tips deductions. The bill would allow individuals to deduct a certain amount of tip wages and overtime from their taxes. The no tax on tips provision in the spending bill would create a new deduction for tipped workers, eliminating what they owe in federal income tax. Tipped workers would still have to pay state and local income tax and payroll taxes. So nothing would change because tipped workers generally, legally or not, don't pay all the money on their tips. In fact, if you want to make sure that tipped workers get more money from you, the best thing you can do is hand them cash for their tips. Under the House measure, only people with annual income of $160,000 or less would qualify for the tipping tax break, while the Senate version would phase out benefits for individuals with income over $150,000. It's all fine, unless you live in New York, I guess. The Senate wants to permanently expand the basic standard deductions, and again, all this is tax shit that I no longer care about at this point. I was much more entertained writing the anti-Marjorie Taylor Greene dystopian scenario, and by writing it, I mean legally plagiarizing it using the legal plagiarization machine on the internet for dystopian purposes. The irony of asking a dystopian piece of fucking software to write a dystopian scenario is not lost on me. Anyway, there's the big, beautiful bill coverage. There's everything that that I can think of on that right now. Whew. My jaw hurts. I'm exhausted. And I'm going to sleep. Hey, thanks for making it to the end of the video. I really could not do any of this without all of you. Those of you watching, and especially those of you who support me on Patreon. I wanted to go ahead and take a minute to thank all of you who do that, because with YouTube being what it is these days, I really cannot do this full-time without the support from each and every one of you. Those people would be Red Joker, Purple Poundini, Jemshin, Britzkrieg, Jupe the Malignant, Michael, Ravalern, Mabbity Babbity, Astral Frontier, Tales of Atonement, Nixie Chan, Kiri Artemis, Limor Pinku, Love Bunny Games, Victorian Alchemist, I'm not saying the last part of that, and you know that, Aurora, Leela Ururaka, Arcton Arclacier, Kiratorian, Dren Hadamata, Jordan M, John L, Lord Bleck, Smiling Game Master, and Fireshard. Thank you so very much. But since you're here, why not go ahead and try watching another one? There should be one that's on the screen right now. And if you are a patron of mine, I wanted to go ahead and thank you again for all of your support. There is still a video you could press, though, if you'd like. I would appreciate it just a little bit.